Hey everyone, how we doing? Good morning. Welcome to another edition of the Occupy Fantasy Underdog Fantasy Best Ball Mania streams. I'm here with Chris this morning. How we doing?
Chuck, it wouldn't be a draft with you and I if we didn't begin the show with some backstage technical difficulties going live and taking a couple minutes to get the show going. But obviously, happy to be here with you once again, trying a mid afternoon stream. For those of you who may be watching one of our shows for the first time, we typically draft every Wednesday, Friday in the evenings around 9 p.m., and we do a Sunday afternoon show. But wanted to move the show not to compete with NBA playoff games and see if that works a little better for everyone. Chuck, speaking of those NBA playoffs, I know you have your Lakers tonight. I do have some of Underdog's higher or lower stat lines up on the screen tonight. I truthfully haven't looked at this game at all. I don't know if you have anything at this early part of the day that stands out to you as something that you would want to call out for the people, though.
Uh, when I was looking through the bets yesterday to take advantage of that Jason Tatum promo, the only one I had from today's game was D'Angelo Russell under 16 and a half points and rebounds. It's pretty unfortunate because I was betting his over 23, his higher than 23. Now he's just not doing it.
Yeah. Looks like they have him at 15 and a half points and rebounds. So it looks like that stat has moved down a little bit. So maybe you are on the right side of history there,
Mm.
Chuck. We will find out, obviously, in a few hours. Morning for you, early afternoon for me here on the East Coast. Let's get into the lobby and start a best ball draft for the 2023 NFL season. We've seen a lot of ADP movement once again between this week and last week, and then obviously since this contest started at the end of April, right after the
Mm-hmm.
NFL draft. The Alexander Madison move has officially begun. I think you and I have talked about it a couple of times on the show here. He's finally going in like the mid 80s after being, I think, around 110 or 105 or something like that. Dalvin Cook's ADP has dropped between like 5 and 10 spots as well. So those two guys are coming together as we expected. I still like Madison where he's going, though, Chuck. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that as well.
My thinking is that it looks like what's going to happen is going to happen with Minnesota, right? Madison is, well, at the very least, Dalvin Cook's not going to be on the team, so Madison's a presumed RB1, and it's just we talked about a little bit. If it's when it's confirmed, he's still going to shoot up a couple rounds from where he is now. So I still think it's a value if we believe in what the rumors are.
So I've entered a Best Ball Mania draft here. We've got 4 spots filled, waiting on 8 more people. So any of you watching, if you want to draft along with the show, feel free to jump into the $25 Best Ball Mania 4 contest on Underdog. $3 million to first place. If you are new to Underdog, never played a contest before, feel free to sign up using the promo code in the description below this video. With promo code Occupy1, we will match up to 100% of your first deposit up to $100. So you can start playing contests like Higher Lower or Best Ball Mania on Underdog with $200 for a $100 deposit. Pretty good deal if you ask me. I've been thinking a little bit about my projections since I put them together and shared them in the Discord with our members at Occupy Fantasy Chuck. And I did want to talk a little bit about how I generate them here on this show. This might be the best time for me to start that process before I'm focusing on picks. I do like to look at the team level. I like to start by looking at how often each team is going to run and or throw the ball. Seems like it may be obvious, but maybe it isn't to those who've never tried to build out projections before. I look at what teams have done over the last couple of years, especially if they haven't changed their coaching staffs at all. And for me, offenses that look like they're going to continue to throw the football the least. Chicago with the lowest pass rate last year. I have them still right there, Chuck. Atlanta, second
Mhm.
lowest. Tennessee Titans, third lowest. Baltimore Ravens, fourth lowest. Maybe the Ravens regress a little bit towards the average, getting Lamar Jackson back over Tyler Huntley, hopefully for a full season. And the Carolina Panthers had a pretty low pass rate as well. Coaching staff change there, so that could creep back towards the average. These are the things, Chuck, that for me really have me higher on some players that obviously are going to be on these offenses that will pass more, but lower on guys like DJ Moore with the Chicago
Mhm.
Bears or Drake London and Kyle Pitts with the Atlanta Falcons. Like that's really where kind of I'm coming from as far as the rankings are concerned. Don't know if you had any thoughts on team level play calling at all at this point in the season. I'm sure You're a much more rational, reasonable human than me, and you don't think about team level play calling in May. But that's where I'm at right now.
Oh, we absolutely do, and we mentioned something similar a couple shows back about like for DJ Moore's a good example. He's going to be the number one wide receiver in that offense, but looking at a player like Devontae Smith, who's the number two in that offense, Devontae Smith is, I mean, as of right now, especially with the way the ADP is, Devontae Smith is expected to have more opportunity, score more fantasy points, even though AJ Brown's still there. So that's something that we definitely want to be aware of is offense on a team by team basis and just where the offense is going specifically.
Yeah. And obviously, pass rate, run rate, only one part of the math there. Efficiency is key as well. I don't have Philadelphia as one of the higher pass rate teams. However, I do think they're going to run right around the league average. Excuse me, I want to say that a little differently. I think they're going to run a well above average 66 plays on offense. The league average was 63 plays last season.
Mhm.
So even if Philadelphia is a little lower on the pass rate side of things, if they're running, 5 to 7 more offensive plays a game, doesn't sound like a lot, but that is a lot over the course of a full season. It does give someone like Devontae Smith a lot more opportunity than, let's say, Drake London or DJ Moore with their
Mhm.
respective low efficiency, low pass rate teams.
Right.
Looking at the schedule that we got, I was looking at the playoff slate of games right before we came onto the stream together, Chuck, on the backstage, and I was really drawn to a couple of playoff schedules. The Dallas Cowboys have my favorite one right now. Buffalo, Miami, and then Detroit Lions there in that very important Week 17. I don't know. I know you look at some of this stuff too. I don't know
Mhm.
if you have any teams that stood out to you with interesting playoff slate schedules here in 2023.
Um, I did. I'm
Putting
trying to find my list. Let
yeah,
me pull that up. I'll get back to you on that later.
putting you on the spot a little bit, just because we're waiting for this contest to fill. We have 3 spots available, so anybody viewing, you're in the middle of the workday. I get it, but if you want to play some best ball, please join Best Ball Mania 4, and let's get this thing going for sure. I'll give you a couple more that I like. I gave you Dallas. They're playing Miami. I like Miami's schedule. We've got the Jets, the new look Jets with Aaron Rodgers under center in Week 15.
Mhm.
Dallas in Week 16, of course, just mentioned that. And then the Baltimore Ravens in Week 17. Really interesting, pardon me, really interesting championship week matchup between the Ravens and the Dolphins if everyone on their respective sides there stays healthy this season. That was one of the better game stack environments in daily fantasy last season when they
Mhm.
played. So hoping for that to come back here in 2023. I think I've completed 5 of these Best Ball Mania drafts so far. I have another slow draft that I'm currently working on. I guess we have a couple of minutes. We could. Well, I don't want to click away from this and have it start. That would be the worst thing that could happen to us here. I have been working on an Eagles Cardinals Week 17 game stack lineup in a slow draft contest right now. So I'm in the 7th round. I've got Jalen Hurts and AJ Brown, and then I was able to get Hopkins in the 4th round, and I just took James Conner in the 7th round. So I'm feeling pretty good about that. Obviously, a little over half of that draft to go, but that might end up being one of my favorite teams so far. Don't know if you have anything that jumps out to you that you've built lately that felt like a really cool construction that you'd like to talk about, Chuck. 1 spot left,
Uh,
by the way.
I mean,
Oh,
I
we just
my
filled up.
my best team. I just got really lucky that everyone passed on all the players that I like, and so I have one team. It's in the puppy. It's not in Best Ball Mania, but it just I don't think I'll build a better team all summer. Just 7 receivers and Ramondre, and then I got my favorite 0 RBs: Chig, Higby. I think Gino and Matt Stafford, my favorite late target quarterback. So
Here we go.
just something that comes together, and you get lucky with
So,
it.
so you're
Oh,
done. So you can pack it in for the summer. You've drafted the best team you're going to draft.
yeah, I'm in the puppy one. I'm
All
good.
right. And that contest filled already. Wow.
Yeah.
That was, not entirely unexpected, Chuck. The puppy drafts, hopefully, no inside information. You haven't heard anything from our rep, but they did run multiple iterations of that last season. I am sure they will drop another $5 puppy contests shortly for those of you who are waiting for a little bit of a lower price point contest to enter a few times. We got the eighth pick here, Chuck, and by ADP anyway, that sets us up potentially for, it looks like Stephon Diggs, AJ
Hmm.
Brown. That's kind of where we are right now. So see how it shakes out. I have not personally done a contest yet where I haven't seen Jefferson go number one, so I'm never
Hmm.
surprised at these first couple of picks. They tend to go pretty much the same way.
I've done a few, but there's been no surprises. It's mostly JJ and then Jamar Chase or Christian McCaffrey sometimes, but I don't think I've seen it. Maybe Kelsey I've seen go one a couple times, but that's pretty much it. All those guys are
That's
going one.
Kelsey first. I mean, he's already going fifth, sixth by ADP. Like first is aggressive, that's for sure.
Well, yeah.
Cup going fourth. I guess one spot ahead of ADP. Cup really the only expensive Ram though, so I
Hmm.
bet that has a lot to do with why you love grabbing Matthew Stafford late. I think you and I talked about that on one of the prior shows we did together a little bit.
Yeah, and I mentioned a couple of the other secondary receivers on the Rams going late too. Tyler Higbee. If they're good, they're great value, and if they're bad, then you're probably getting them at the correct ADP anyway. So I think it's
All
all
right.
upside.
I haven't been able to do this once yet, so I'm going to take Bajan now.
Let's do
Really
it.
good chance to be the number one running back this season. Very happy to finally have some Bajan Robinson in my personal portfolio here, Chuck. Um, okay.
We get a great Week 17 matchup too. I think it's a great Week 17 matchup. Falcons versus Bears. Bijan scores 2 touchdowns in the first quarter, and Justin
There we
Fields
go.
just has
Justin
to try
Fields
and
keeps
do it the
going.
rest of the game. Yeah,
So,
if
and
we
we've
go that route.
also got, just to look at the full playoff slate, Carolina Panthers week 15, Indianapolis Colts week 16, and then obviously it's never a bad idea to just maximize your stacks within the division as well for some upside. So a lot of different outs here and ways to maximize Bijan in this lineup. Although obviously Fields would be best for that championship week combination, I wouldn't mind Anthony Richardson either, just because we do have a stack there in the semifinal
Hmm.
week as well.
Hmm.
All right.
I did stack. I think I took my first Anthony Richardson shares on a. My first pick was Devonte Adams. Just Week 17 correlation gives me an excuse to finally take Richardson, and I think it could
Mhm.
work out great. I don't think I stacked him. Don't need to. Hopefully, he just rushes in for two, and Devonte just catches a couple balls.
And another, on that note, another reason I love getting Bajan is I don't really feel any temptation to add any more Atlanta pieces around him. He's
Hmm.
not a
Hmm.
quarterback, but it just feels like with the rush rate we expect, he's really one of the basically the only Atlanta piece I'm interested in. I'm sorry to say that for the fans
Hmm.
of Kyle Pitts and Drake London watching the show, but I think I talked about that off the top. Why I am a little lower on those guys this season. I'm sure I'll get some of them, but I am by no means prioritizing it at this point.
I drafted my first share of Kyle Pitts on the last stream with Ken, so I'm getting there.
Kind of intrigued by, well, I tend to name a player and then he goes, but Amon Ra, if he falls to me, is where I would like to go here. Um, doesn't feel incredibly likely, but let's see. Um, comes to, and there's Garrett Wilson, who I think is going a little high. I
Hmm.
like Aaron Rodgers, I like the Jets, but I don't know, man. Garrett Wilson at 15, I wish he was a third or fourth round pick, and of course, there he goes. So I do need receivers because I've already taken a running back here, and obviously we're betting on Bajan just being amazing. Let's see what is best available. I think I like Chris Olave over Waddle here.
Hmm.
Quarterback situation not the best, I would say, with Derek Carr, but love his ceiling and what he showed was possible last season. So a little bit, I think, of a reach here as far as his ADP is concerned, but he was my favorite
Hmm.
receiver left in this spot.
Yeah, I'm coming around on him a little bit. I think I'm more in on Olave than I am in on Waddle anyway. But I think my hesitation with Waddle is just because my concerns with Tua.
Yeah. Um, Insanely efficient season for him last year when he was under
Hmm.
center, which wasn't as much as we wanted, obviously with the concussions.
Hmm.
But even if we get the breaks with health with Tua, my concern there is we get a little bit of regression back to his career average performance wise, and obviously that
Hmm.
wouldn't be great for the wide receiver two on this offense, right? So I think you and I share the concerns there with Waddle. Fine with stacking the Dolphins because obviously we know what the ceiling is, but you're drafting these guys at ceiling right now, Waddle especially.
Something weird going on with their running back situation too. I feel like I saw someone was rumored to possibly sign with them.
I mean, I don't know how reliable it is, but I know there was some Twitter chatter about Dalvin Cook. Obviously, that
Right.
is the big news driving Madison's ADP up is that the Vikings are going to potentially move on from Dalvin Cook. There goes Fields. So the dream is dead on
Hmm.
that build, Chuck.
It's a pretty early Fields.
Yeah, he goes in the mid 30s typically. He should have been there around my pick in this round,
Hmm.
typically ahead of Hurts. Didn't even
Hmm.
realize that. That feels bad. Anyway, Dalvin Cook potentially rumored to be someone the Dolphins are interested in. I don't really see it. This is not Mike McDaniel's one of these guys that wants to throw the football, and then beyond that, he seems to trust guys that he has a history with. There's a reason they brought in Jeff Wilson and Raheem Mostert in the first place. He knows what they're trying to accomplish on offense. I know that sounds silly, but this is how these football coaches think. So we'll see if Dalvin Cook getting added to any new roster would certainly be interesting, but Miami would be a surprise to me personally.
We've been talking about Madison a lot. At what point does Cook become a value if he gets released and isn't signed right away?
I mean, he's got to have more upside than Fournette and Elliott, I would think. Am I
Agree.
going to do this? I think I am. I think I'm going to draft these two running backs here. And I've got a little bit of week 11 by chaos here. So I've got three players that all share the same bye week early.
Hmm.
It's not a tremendous concern yet for me, Chuck, but it is something I'm going to think about for the rest of the draft.
Chris and I were talking about bye weeks before the show, how important they are to pay attention to when we're making our decisions. And for the most part, I think just pick the best player possible. But it was something like 20% of third place teams last year were within 10 points of the second place team, which is just one week from your second tight end or whatever. So it's something that we want to be aware of. I don't think we want to take any more guys with that same bye week, but so far, I don't think it's important enough where we. Here's the other thing: if people are going to avoid this combination because of the bye weeks together, then we're kind of getting that unique combination that we're shooting for. And so I think it works out fine. Especially we're going to draft strongly in the later rounds anyway to kind of make up for it.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. Obviously, I have no choice at this point. So,
Hmm.
probably need to go heavier on pass catcher for like the rest of this draft now because
Hmm.
really strong couple of running backs in the first three rounds. Basically, again, want to assume I'm right there. Those two guys are hopefully two of the two best, but two of the
Hmm.
five best running backs on the season, and that puts me in a good position to win having those guys in my lineup every single week if that
Hmm.
pans out.
Hmm.
At this point, even though I think it's a little early for him, I personally have Terry McLaurin as my highest ranked wide receiver out of everyone that's left, even now. His ADP has creeped up about a dozen or so spots. I mean, it does feel like picking him at
Hmm.
41 here is aggressive, Chuck, but that is one of the players I'm thinking about.
Hmm. And when we're reaching for players like this, I think the main consideration is what are the chances he's going to be there on our next pick? And Terry McLaurin, probably not very high, right?
Right.
So
So, quarterback concerns there. Sam Howell, Jacoby Brissett, but you know,
He's never had a
we're
good quarterback. If he has an
nope,
average quarterback finally for one season, he's probably good value.
nope. And we're playing a tournament here. We are trying to be more right than our opponents. And
Hmm.
if this is a value that I see on the board, I have to take advantage of it and hope
Hmm.
that it pans out. So when it comes back around to us, we'll go back to the board in the mid 50s. I think there'll be some more opportunities for some high upside guys there that we can talk about as well. Yeah, I know you kind of covered this while I was thinking about what to do. I'm not sweating the bye week situation at all, but that third place to second place differential is key. We don't want to leave an automatic zero on the
Hmm.
board in any given week. So
And this year, considering the regular season scoring format and how much money is in the regular season, the difference between first and second is likely to be a touchdown. It's probably not going to be that big, and it's what, a $2 million difference or $1 million difference, something. So it's something that you want to be aware of. Just yeah.
So I have DJ Moore, who obviously just went here in the fourth round. I think he's like my wide receiver 45, which is really bad. But it does tie back to that volume and efficiency that we
Mhm.
expect from the Bears offense. 45 is kind of my baseline projection. Does that mean, if he hits his ceiling in an offense that doesn't dramatically change his play calling, where does that put him? Like wide receiver 25? Like
Mhm.
I have a hard time pulling the trigger on DJ Moore, and I'll give credit to I do listen to sometimes the late round podcast, JJ Zacharyson, previously of Number Fire. He was talking about this same subject a little bit, and I think he raised the point that if you like DJ Moore, the best way to get exposure to him at cost right now is to just take Fields, because
Mhm.
Fields' cost is semi reasonable, and you're going to get all of Moore's scoring through Fields.
Mhm.
So I thought
Mhm.
that was kind of an interesting way to think about these weird ADPs, I'll call them, for players in strange kind of situations right now.
I like that. Just get exposure to the offense. Period.
Ken Walker has. I feel like this is the floor. Feels like this has normalized a little bit. The fifth round feels about right. I think the risk is now probably worth taking at his cost. When he was going in the second round when we started these shows, Chuck, it was a little aggressive, but Walker is now kind of back on my radar. I'm willing to. I don't need him on this team, but I'm willing to take shots on him in general at this point.
Yeah, when he falls 10 or so picks, I'm okay clicking on him at that point.
So there goes Mr. London, and we are very NFC South heavy. We're about to be anyway, because I like the Bucks wide receivers Godwin and Evans.
Hmm.
I've nerfed their projections a little bit because this was an offense that had the highest pass rate with Tom Brady last year. I put them basically at league average with the combination of Baker Mayfield and Kyle Trask under center.
Hmm.
If they go above that projection and are efficient or anywhere close to what they were last year with a kind of aging, underperforming Tom Brady in his final season, these guys are going to be league winners here. Evans and Godwin in the fifth round. Like them both. I've taken a lot of Evans on this show. I went Godwin this time just
Hmm.
for a little bit of diversification, but I'm pretty happy with it.
I like it.
So J.K. Dobbins and Joe Mixon coming off.
Get the week 17 correlation with Chris Olave as well.
Yeah, not bad whatsoever. And then I guess Derek Carr, Baker Mayfield, who I think starts more games anyway, those quarterbacks have to be on my radar a little bit for some stacks. Justin Herbert comes off. When this comes back around in round 7,
Hmm.
that's kind of the Deshaun Watson, Anthony Richardson spot for quarterbacks. I'm kind of interested in Anthony Richardson, and as you were talking about a little earlier, don't necessarily need to stack with Anthony Richardson based on what we expect his skill set to be.
Hmm.
So I think that might be a direction I consider with kind of a little weird construction here. Not necessarily prioritizing a stack if we go that route with our QB1, and then maybe just stacking some QB2s with these receivers that I have.
Yeah.
So Pierce. Damian Pierce is a weird one for me. I do think that offense maybe changes its tune a little bit with a new coach, but I do still like the player. I don't know how. I have him lower than a sixth round pick on my own end, but I don't think this is a bad spot for him. I'm just not super high on him in general.
Hmm.
All right, what are we gonna do now? Screw it. We're gonna just double up on these Bucks receivers,
I
and we're
like it.
gonna
I
try to
like it.
prioritize Mayfield late. Should be pretty easy to do.
As you know, I'm higher on Mayfield than the public, so I'm a fan. It's
Yeah,
like, can
we.
they?
I think I've done this a couple of times on the show with you, but it's just because the value seems way too glaring at this point, and I don't know if it's ever going to course correct all summer. So could be a Bucks heavy portfolio for me this year. Sounds like the same for you. Tampa Bay with New Orleans in week 17, but then we've also got playoff matchups with the Jordan Love led Green Bay Packers and Trevor
Mhm.
Lawrence's Jacksonville Jaguars in semifinals week as other options for some stacks that should be on the board. Pardon me.
One team I'm not getting as much exposure to as I'd like, the Jaguars. I do think that their offense is going to be a little bit spread out, but I also think the offense is going to be pretty good. So it's a team kind of like the Chiefs. You don't know exactly, like people think it's going to be Calvin Ridley. I'm having a tough time seeing it, honestly. But
I think it's still Christian Kirk personally.
yeah.
I smash his name every time
Hmm.
ahead of ADP, ahead of Calvin Ridley.
Hmm.
Evan Engram, we saw the pass volume there be really, really strong for the Jaguars. So Ridley being out of football for a year, obviously very talented player, like the player, but where he's being drafted just feels way too aggressive. I 100% agree with you. We will not be getting Rashad White into our Buccaneer stack here. That's okay. I will survive, Chuck.
We'll be okay without Rashad White.
Yeah, I think I'm fine. Yeah. All right. Really, we've got a 2-4 going, so no quarterbacks, no tight ends just yet. I'm sort of. I keep zooming in on Higby super late as my TE1. I
Hmm.
like Chigakonkwo with the Titans as
Hmm.
well. That's kind of where I'm at as far as tight ends are concerned, because really all of the high upside guys that I'm interested in are off the board. So I don't
Hmm.
really worry about it for at least a couple of other picks here.
I talked about it last time. I'm trying to avoid the elite, borderline elite tight ends. My roster looks so much better at the end when I'm taking the guys I like, the tight ends at the end of the draft, rather than using a top 10 round pick. Like TJ Hawkinson's a guy that I was clicking on a bunch. I don't know that I'm going to be there as often. I'm mostly just taking the guys in that range now around him. And, he's going to be a monster, though. So he's going to be very helpful.
Dalvin Cook dropping like a rock going here in the mid 70s. I think you're definitely at a point where you have to start considering him,
Hmm.
especially if he just waltzes into being RB1 on a team in a good situation.
Hmm.
I mean, if he does, a team that still has a glaring need, I would say, for a 1A or a 1B to their preferred tailback right now would be the Dallas Cowboys. Tony Pollard's usage is probably going to stay where it has been. That would be an interesting landing spot for Dalvin Cook. Pure speculation for me, but if he were to land there, he's going to go probably higher than this. So I think he's
Hmm.
worth
Hmm.
considering given the uncertainty there. Um, we're gonna do it. We're gonna take Anthony Richardson. I haven't
Let's do it.
taken him at all. We are just gonna double up on two of the high upside rookies in the same roster here in this draft.
I like it. Are we considering stacking him with Alec Pierce or is it Jelani Woods?
Boy, we are already talking about some disgusting players, and it's
Oi.
only the seventh round here. Probably a little more interested in Pierce than
Hmm.
Jelani Woods. I mean, there's a couple of tight ends that could get the football in Indianapolis, right? Kylan Granson, and
Hmm.
then we have Mo Alley Cox, I believe, is still hanging around. So I'm not super interested in drafting these punt tight ends in these contests, especially when it's not super clear they're even going to be the main guy on their own team. So I guess that's my mindset there.
Someone like Mo Alley Cox, I want to say he had 1 week last season where he scored maybe 20 fantasy points or close to it, and he was a late round pick. And from those late round picks, those tight ends, I think if Mo Alley Cox has 1 week like that and he's your last round pick, then that was a really good last round pick. It was early in the
Uh,
season too; it wasn't even late.
Jelani Woods he's a free draft pick, 16th round,
Hmm.
211 ADP. So there's
Hmm.
really no true risk there, especially if it's a third tight end that you're drafting.
Hmm.
Um, so I get it, but I'm not like actively thinking about boy, which which Colts tight end I want. I suppose in this roster, Chuck, I guess it's just like a free stacking partner, so maybe we
Yeah.
should be paying a little more attention to it. But
Well, I've seen people
take
hype up Jelani Woods, and I'm just based on what? Because he's there.
athletic profile wise, he's a very interesting player. But
Hmm.
I mean, beyond that, I don't know if there's much there that we should be interested in. Not like the volume's going to be crazy. Let's go the other way. We talk about him every show, so I'm going to take Alexander Madison once again, and I feel really, really good about my three-headed monster at tailback here.
Yeah, this is a solid construction. Have three running backs who we can reasonably expect to contribute every single week, get a couple handcuffs, and we're good. Madison. I've been taking a lot of the Minnesota offense, pretty much everybody. Just at ADP, I think they're mostly good picks.
Only I am going to pay attention to that week 11 bye, especially at like quarterback where I have Anthony Richardson now. Like I basically have to write off anybody. I think the way I've drafted this roster, it's probably a two quarterback roster, so I can't take a week 11 quarterback. Fortunately, the only quarterback I think that really eliminates as far as stacking partners in my build here are concerned, it's Derek Carr, because I'm not going to double
Mm.
up on Derek Carr and Anthony Richardson week 11 buys here.
Hmm.
But other than that, I think we're okay. Not a ton of landmines to worry about.
Are you going to be comfortable with a quarterback room of Anthony Richardson and Baker Mayfield?
I was hoping that you wouldn't say it out loud because no, I'm not comfortable with that. But we are, I think you oriented my mindset appropriately in one of our first shows. I can't necessarily worry about that. I have to operate as if I am right about this being the
Yes.
right team
Hmm.
this season. So you have to be uncomfortable with some of your builds for them to have a chance, I think. That's, you have to walk that fine line in these games we play, Chuck, of is this viable or is this just plain stupid? I think trying to
Hmm.
build in floor with a third quarterback I don't love would be the wrong move here. So
Especially with Anthony Richardson, I agree. We're taking him this early. We expect him to be borderline elite, if not elite. So,
yeah, we just have to hope and pray that that's correct. And if not, we've got Baker Mayfield to lead us to the promised land. So we're all good.
and we've got
Actually,
149 other drafts too.
there is that. There is definitely that. Bateman, Jameson Williams. I'm just getting caught up on who has
Hmm.
come off the board here.
It's kind of interesting to me how the Baltimore Ravens wide receiver room is playing out in ADP a little bit. I still can't believe Odell Beckham is as high as he is, going over some players from other teams. Even I don't think that's a guy I'll click on one time unless he falls 5 rounds. Bateman though, I'm in on Bateman and Zay Flowers.
108
I'm coming around too.
Yeah, 108 for Beckham, 98 for Bateman, and 90 for Zay Flowers. I prefer Bateman here. He's
Mm.
my wide receiver one, I think, for the Ravens. So that's the only quibble I have with it. I think Beckham as the third is probably how it should be, but I don't see any real reason why all three of these guys should be going in the same place because it doesn't seem like that realistically can be right. Basically, everyone's drafting their favorite one in this spot and hoping they're correct about who the wide receiver one there is,
Hmm.
complimenting Mark Andrews because at least two of those are going to be completely incorrect. And we are on the clock. Uh,
Speaking of Odell, only receiver left. The top 12.
I'm going to go with Tyler Boyd.
Hmm.
Time was running out on us a little bit, but like the offense there in Cincinnati and want some high upside players at pass catcher on this team. So I'm okay with it.
Hmm.
I briefly considered David Njoku at tight end, but I don't. He's not my highest ranked tight end on the board, so it just feels like a little bit of a reach for me. I think there's value there that I can leverage.
I like it.
All right, and of course, Njoku comes off directly after I come off of him myself, so that always makes you feel good.
Oh yeah.
Um, all right, we come back around pretty quickly here. So finally a show together where I did not get Juju Smith-Schuster. That's why I was kind of panic picking there a little bit. He was who I
Mm-hmm.
was hoping to get.
The I'm pretty high on Juju, picking him almost every time.
Charbonnet. Let's see. We've got 5 receivers, so we're pretty well set up at receiver. Um, Era has a little bit of a running back run, which doesn't bother me at all because I feel pretty good about what I have. I do like Pat Fryermuth a lot, but
Mm-hmm.
like I said earlier, I've got my eye on Tyler Higbee. I guess maybe Cole Kmet, but again, we talked about this a couple shows ago. Robert Tonyan there now. I don't think it's a stone cold lock that Cole Kmet is TE1 in Chicago. Only reason I'm thinking about those guys is some correlation with Bajan, though, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Um, AJ Dillon comes off. I will not be taking Odell. I can tell you that much. He's not on my radar here. Um, it Alec Pierce is staring us in the face, Chuck. Nico Collins, I know your favorite players. A little early for all of these guys, though. So, kind of a weird spot for me in this draft.
I was talking about the
Um,
Jaguars too. I think Zay Jones could be kind of a little sleeper in this ADP range. Give us a couple spike weeks. That's more than enough.
all right, Chuck. We are taking Zay Jones. I'll
Let's
let you
do
take
it.
that pick here. I did briefly consider going with Fryermuth just because we don't have a tight end yet, but I still think there's value there. So, high upside shot correlates well with some of the players we have here. Feeling
Mm-hmm.
pretty good about this roster so far for sure. No
Yeah,
one ever feels bad about their best ball rosters in May. After all, we'll feel bad in like week 7, but we won't feel bad now.
yeah,
And
yeah,
of course, Komet comes off the board as I was talking about him. So we're pushing players into other people's rosters by talking about them here.
yeah.
We're
We
doing
can't be
people a
wrong
favor.
about this. Like you won't know we're wrong until October, right? So we can
Yeah,
say whatever we
exactly. So
want.
we can just basically be like, "Hey, this is completely correct." No, obviously, everybody's doing a little bit of that. We're all optimistic and happy and fired up for fantasy football, but yeah, talking about some of this stuff is a little borderline insane. Don't worry, we're well aware of that on our end. Okay, I am still addicted to taking Antonio Gibson, and
Hmm.
one thing that I didn't even fully wrap my mind around, Chuck, until a couple of days ago, is that the Washington Commanders brought in Eric Bieniemy, previously the offensive coordinator for the Kansas City Chiefs under Andy Reid. Antonio Gibson seems like the type of player that could most closely resemble a player like Jet McKinnon in this Commanders offense, right? And that has to, I think, obviously looking at the touchdown efficiency for McKinnon last year and expecting a replication of that from Gibson would be insane. But I do think Gibson is undervalued, and I'm going to be clicking on him almost every single time he's available in this spot. And it looks like he might be. So, a man of my word, he's on the queue.
Yeah, he's also one of my favorite late round running backs. I'm pretty sure he's up at I can't see because it's blurry, but 126 ADP. He's up
Yeah.
over a full round from when we first started drafting, which is pretty interesting, which means that we're right, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it means the field anyway does feel similarly to us, which is really all we can know at this point. And so, it does make me feel better that we're on the right side of history in some respects. But the field is often wrong, so there is
Hmm.
also that. It does have to we have to keep ourselves grounded by reminding ourselves of that as well.
Hmm.
Okay, so we are in fact locking in Antonio Gibson here in round 11. More than okay with it. Chig came off the board right before this pick. I think I got to look at tight end here on the turn. So I'm probably going to be going with one of Schultz or Tyler Higbee, my 2 highest ranked tight ends remaining when this comes back around to us, Chuck.
Schultz feels undervalued. I mean, Dak kind of used him as a safety net, and how is he not going to be that on this offense? The rookie
Right.
quarterback.
Yeah, it's one of those things that is something people kind of go towards mentally is, oh, well, rookies tend to lead on their tight ends. When they
Mm,
have these tight ends that have proven to be able to handle the volume in their offenses, like Schultz, they're kind of auto picks, especially when they're free double digit round draft picks.
yeah.
So I don't mind that at all here. Damian Harris in the Bills offense is a player I haven't really wrapped my head around, but I think a great zero RB esque type pick to lean into if you need that. We do not need that on this team. So I say that as I just took a running back, of course, because it just sounds great.
Yeah, yeah. Don't need zero RB though. We have the strongest running backs that we can have at the top: Bijan and Ramondre.
Yes, you know the sky is the limit for this running back room, and also for G. Gustafson's roster, as he just took Sky Moore for sure. Jaden Reed is being talked up a little bit, I think, in the best ball streets. Probably has an easy path anyway to being a starting wide receiver for the Green Bay Packers. I just think the problem there is, what does Green Bay look like? Obviously, at the top of
Yeah.
the show, we talked a little bit about projecting offensive production and efficiency, looking at expected play calling. Green Bay's play calling probably stays pretty similar to prior years because the same staff is in place, Chuck, but we just don't know what's going to happen with Jordan Love under center. Okay, so Schultz has gone off the board, so we will not be taking him here, but I will default to one of my other favorite plays at this point in the draft, Tyler Higbee. And only because I think you semi-bullied me into it, now I am thinking a little bit about a third quarterback with Matthew Stafford if he's still there.
Mm-hmm. I like it. Back to Jaden Reed. This Green Bay situation is insane to me. Why is he going so high now? Like, he's getting steamed up. We saw it last year with Romeo Dubs, Christian Watson a
Yeah.
little bit, but like, it's Jordan. I don't know. I don't believe in Jordan Love. Unfortunately, I haven't seen it. Maybe I'm wrong, but I'm getting to Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon. I don't think I've drafted any receivers from Green Bay yet.
I haven't been able to click on any of them either. Christian Watson is probably, I mean, rightfully so, being drafted as the best option. But Romeo Dobbs probably has to be considered a value still, I believe, still available in this draft, for example. And we've at least seen him work with Love before in the preseason, and he was heavily targeted. So Jaden Reed, the shiny new toy. If I were to be gambling on a Green Bay wide receiver, I would probably just eat the value with Dobbs at this point. That's kind of how I feel
Same.
about the situation. I have Dobbs ranked higher than Jaden Reed personally at this point.
Mm-hmm.
We will not be getting Alec Pierce. It's okay. Once again, I think
It's
we
okay.
will survive.
Set his 2.5 targets a game.
2.5 targets. He'll average a touchdown a game though, because that's how life goes sometimes.
Yeah, give us 130-point week.
Nico feels like a great spot to get Nico. This is right where he goes, but it just, at this point in the draft, always feels like a great pick. I know you've got a lot of him. I've started taking a lot of him as a result as well.
His ADP is up almost a round too.
I think my guy, DJ Chark, is still here. I want to say I have like 100% exposure to him. Jay Pitt's watching the show. He's watching us, and as is Jer Smith. Take Stafford when I said I was interested in him. So, okay. Suppose I need to think about what we're going to do next here. Definitely seems insane that Kyler Murray's going in the 13th round. You have to hope he comes back earlier than like week 8 for it to be worth it, but I really like that a lot. All my guys are going here. This is brutal. Okay. We did not discuss Downs as a stacking option with Anthony Richardson, but I don't mind that pick there right before I'm on the board. I guess purely because it's a value, I will take Gallup at the top of the board here. It does feel like he's a hard player to project with Brandon Cooks now in the fold there in Dallas, but definitely a lot of upside if he does still end up in a top 2 wide receiver spot for the Cowboys. Or, I mean, they could still run a lot of 11 personnel, maybe pass more without Elliott under or in the backfield, excuse me, with Dak Prescott. So there's a lot of ways that Gallup can beat this ADP, I think. But we're just taking shots now, ultimately.
Yeah, just trying to capture that upside. Sharp. I want to talk about Arizona for a second. I was drafting Arizona players in almost every draft, and I kind of had to stop myself after looking at my exposures because I just have way too much Marquise Brown. DeAndre Hopkins not that much, but Kyler Murray I was drafting so much, and it's like if he plays and he's healthy, then it's going to be a great pick. But it's still a pretty good risk drafting him this early.
Yeah, and it sounds like you may. I think you've made the decision that you've already reached enough exposure to it where if it happens, you're set
Mm-hmm.
up pretty well to benefit from it. So I think that's probably the right decision for you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, okay.
It's interesting week 17 matchup too because there, even if Kyler's back by week 17, are the Cardinals going to be good? Like, is it even worth stacking with the
Right.
Eagles in week 17? We have to if we have Jalen Hurts, but I think we're hoping
It
for a lot.
could be similar to when Cleveland got Deshaun Watson back really late last year. Like,
Mm.
was it even worth it? I mean, thankfully they if you had exposure to that type of situation last year, they played him anyway. But
Mm-hmm.
what is Kyler going to look like, and is he going to look like Watson did last year and be really rusty? Like, there's a lot of ways that goes sideways. Definitely. Um, we are flying. Midday drafters just want to get back to whatever they are doing at the office. That's for
Yeah,
sure.
right.
Okay. Baker will be our last round pick, that's for sure. I guess I've already got Boyd. I'm going to be interested in Irv
Mm-hmm.
as well. I think he's got a high upside possibility there with Joe Burrow as his quarterback. So, feeling pretty good about having 7 wide receivers, a lot that I took early. Feel good about the running backs that I took early. So, I'm okay with taking another tight end here and having 2 of them already on my roster.
Who is that player? Are you thinking about stacking that week 17 Bengals Chiefs game with our favorite last round receiver?
I could very easily do that here, couldn't I? With
Mm-hmm.
Richie James Jr., maybe even a lottery ticket and Clyde Edwards-Helaire at running back as well would be another way to do that if I had to. But yeah, I think thinking about some of these secondary stacks outside of our quarterback position is also a really good way to build a roster and probably doesn't get talked about enough on shows like this. Obviously, we focus on stacking our quarterbacks,
Yeah.
but with Anthony Richardson on my roster, I'm a little more open to doing other types of stacks because I'm assuming that my QB1 is not necessarily going to be the best quarterback to stack this year.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Bryce Young goes. Singletary is, I mean, it's super late in the draft now, but Singletary is a player I don't really have a good read on this season, but it will be interesting because that's talking about Damian Pierce earlier on the show and how I
Mm-hmm.
don't really know if I love his ADP. A lot of it has to do with Devin Singletary. I feel like it's a very ambiguous backfield is probably the easiest way to leave it.
He's one of my favorites to draft in this range. Singletary. It's a guy I'm comfortable clicking on. He's going to get work in Houston, so just hoping it works out there. And Tank Bigsby, I've mentioned a bunch. I'm a fan of Tank Bigsby. I think he gets work even if ETN is healthy.
What do you think about Hunter Renfro this year? The addition of Jacoby Myers behind Devontae Adams is obviously scary. I guess
Mm-hmm.
the only reason I'm really thinking about it right now is that is a correlation spot with Anthony Richardson, the Week 17 Colts Raiders game.
I like Hunter Renfro. If he gives us a couple games where he gets a couple of those 10 target games, even if it's only 2 all season at this point, I think it's great. And just thinking about the routes he's going to run, like he's going to be in the slot, right? And Jacoby maybe moves to the outside. I don't know. I think Hunter Renfro is a little bit undervalued here.
Yep, and so did Glearoyd as well. So congratulations to them, the winners of the Hunter Renfro sweepstakes in this contest. It was not me. Okay.
Kind of similar to Elijah Moore, though. Like I think Elijah Moore is going a little too high, but I think the opportunity is there if he's on the inside.
Man, I have a ton of this player, but it's just too good to pass on. Oh no, well that's all right. I locked up the stack. I was trying to take Hardman ahead of Mayfield there, but
Uh,
at least we ensured we got the Buccaneer stack, so I can live with that overdraft, I guess. I don't have a choice, so it is what it is. Hardman should still be there at 185. He goes about 189, so I'll leave him in my queue at this point.
Hardman's a guy that probably wouldn't have been picking much if it wasn't for your endorsement, but now he's a guy. He's sometimes there in the very last round, or sometimes he goes undrafted. I do not mind clicking his name.
Typical high upside receiver, very speedster, competitive room there, obviously in with the Jets, but I think the baseline expectation is they try to move on from Corey Davis, and that should
Mhm.
open up some work for Hardman. I feel like when we get around to September and we get into the middle of the season, we're going to be not completely shocked that Hardman is playable from week to week in DFS. I'll put it that way. I don't think you're going to be starting him on your 12 12 team like home league like rosters or anything like that, but he's going to be a usable player in some other formats for sure,
Mm-hmm.
with upside, which is what we're drafting for this late in the contest.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, Allen Lazard's apparently bad, so or inefficient. Maybe bad's the wrong word, but McCole Hardman should get enough work.
Hardman with really, I mean, it's hard to ignore draft capital, and Hardman also a second round pick himself in the NFL. So, you know, not a player I think we can completely slot into the second unit of that depth chart just automatically at this point. So, he's gonna be have the chance to compete anyway. That's really all we can know on May 18th.
Good Week 17 game too against the Vikings,
And
and
we have
Week
Madison on our
16 with the
roster.
Commanders. Yeah, and we have Gibson and McLaurin too, so good correlation for Week 16 as well.
I'm gonna pretend I did that on purpose, Chuck. Thank you for pointing that out.
It's just kind of you don't consciously think about it; your brain just knows what to do.
I do have a wide receiver that we can take that is correlation with Anthony Richardson. Um, he's not being drafted. I think I can save him for the last round. We haven't talked about him really at all. He's a free agent addition to the Indianapolis Colts this year. He used to play with another quarterback that was high upside. I'll give you obviously a couple rounds here to see if you can figure out who I have my eyes on at this point. It's a shame though because if I go that route, I might not be taking our other favorite late
Mm-hmm.
wide receiver. Maybe I mean 10 wide receivers feels like a lot. I did that on one of the shows we did earlier. It just feels like the diminishing there's a diminishing point of return you reach. And now maybe it's okay on a roster like this, Chuck, where I've gone super heavy at running back and I'm just, if these guys are not my top two running backs or a third one in a flex spot for the majority of the weeks this year, I'm probably in trouble, right? So maybe I could go a little more aggressive at wide receiver as a result of that, or maybe not. Maybe I should have a little more of a balanced build. I don't know if you have an overarching kind of roster construction you stick to, or do you think about the players you have and kind of alter which direction you're going based off of the upside there? That's kind of what I'm thinking about personally at this point.
So I never go into a draft thinking, all right, I need to slam receivers this time, or we're going to slam running backs. It's kind of
Right.
just taking what the draft gives you and going with the flow of the draft. Here, I mean, our running back capital at the top, Bijan and Ramondre, it's really strong. And I'm drafting less running backs than I did last year, I think, because I'm taking them earlier. But I'm okay going fragile, hyper fragile running back build. That's when you don't take that many running backs.
All right, let's do it. We're going to take Richie James,
Mm-hmm.
get some correlation with my Cincinnati picks at tight end and wide receiver. And again, I'll be shocked if this player goes. It's Isaiah McKenzie with the
Mm-hmm.
Indianapolis Colts.
Mm-hmm.
Former Buffalo Bill, gets us at least a little bit of, like you said, second or third place in the regular season. The difference could be a touchdown.
Mm-hmm.
Isaiah McKenzie to me feels like a player that is going to score some pivotal touchdowns for the Colts this year. Only 5 touchdowns last season with the Bills, 2 the year before that, although he was injured in most of 2021, I believe. I like this player. I think it's an interesting addition to the Colts wide receiver room. Don't know how it's going to shake out for McKenzie. Could be more of a kick returner, wide receiver 4. Like, that's absolutely the baseline expectation for him. But he has had some high upside games as a slot wide receiver
Mhm.
previously with Josh Allen. We've got a quarterback that most closely profiles to Josh Allen joining the Colts this year. It's just very interesting when you think about it in that kind of light.
I mean, take him in the last round. It's all upside, right? If he does anything, then all right, we're happy.
So Jelani Woods goes. We will lock in Isaiah McKenzie. And I'm feeling pretty good about this team. It's, we'll see where we're at in October, obviously.
Hmm.
But I think we did pretty well here. I feel pretty good about getting a very fragile team together with these running backs, especially. Um, and let's hope Baker Mayfield looks a lot more like the Baker Mayfield who played very well the year he won a playoff game with the Cleveland Browns than he has looked in the past couple seasons.
I believe in Baker.
This is a pro Baker show, so for anyone watching, Chuck and I are Baker believers. We will be probably drafting a lot of Baker Mayfield on this show this year. That is for
Yeah.
sure. Chuck, I appreciate you joining me once again for another Best Ball draft on the channel.
Hmm.
We will be back tomorrow night, 9 p.m. is our next scheduled show. We'll obviously announce who the hosts are on that. It very well could be you and I again, Chuck, which is more
Hmm.
than okay with me. Maybe
Absolutely.
we'll get you to join the draft and I'll narrate the next time around. But I guess before we close it out, just a reminder, if you want to sign up for Underdog, we have a link in the description of the video below. Code Occupy1 if you are a new user to Underdog. We will match 100% of your first deposit up to $100 so you can start drafting teams in Best Ball Mania 4, playing some Pick'em fantasy contests. A lot of great ways to play fantasy sports. Football right now is what we're talking about, but a lot of different options on Underdog. Chuck, do you have any thoughts you want to leave the people with today?
Lakers in 6.
All right, I like the optimism there. Good luck to you and your Lakers, Chuck. Appreciate it. I will talk
Appreciate
to
it, guys.
you soon.
See you guys tomorrow.